Rena and I have been like really extremely privileged to work with Nino and with those authors here and to produce such an amazing publication. I'm very happy this evening. Maybe, like I will maybe not be so concentrated to tell everything what I want, because I really feel very happy of being here. Because, like Rena and I, we know Nino since 20 years, even more. And we are following his work, and we are also following his work from the near and also from the distance, because basically we are mostly based in Belgrade, Serbia. We are not based in Berlin. And in the last 20 years. And in that sense, we have been also involved in the things which have been connected to the continuous struggle of Roma and Sinti community here in Germany, but also in the Balkans, which is deeply connected with the work of Nihad Nino Pušija. And we wanted to actually to connect all these dots and all these things, and to express it together with Nino in this publication. And I'm really, really honored that we had this opportunity and to work together.
For me, a key moment was actually when I understood, this sounds simple, but when I understood that Nino is actually taking photos of everything that is happening around him. There was a moment in his life when he started to follow what is happening around him and in his closer surrounding. And I understood through the depiction of this and immersement in this closer surrounding of him, very personal surrounding, he started slowly and succeeded to give us a very personal image of the big political issues and social issues that are forming our society today, that are influencing the lives of the people in a way that is hard actually to represent. And I'm talking here especially of the destiny of the refugees, mostly Roma refugees that came through the Balkan wars to Berlin. And this is also actually the entry point to Nino's work, and maybe it's also, maybe it's also the beginning, the actual beginning of your work, of your photographic work, from how I perceive it. So I realized that we are actually going to do some kind of also not only history of the struggle of the Roma people, but also we are diving into a kind of autobiographical history of Nino and how he is part of this Roma movement for political representation, but also for cultural participation. In this case, in Germany, in the Berlin society. I was like feeling like somebody who's looking now through Nino's eyes to what has happened in 30 years, and this is really a long time. So for me personally, if you ask my personal feelings about the book, it's really, for me, it's a lot about history of this struggle, but a very personal view, not only of Nino, then, but also personal histories of the people he portrayed. And this relation between the portrayed people and Nino, this is coming more and more to the forefront when I start to look the photographs.
I prefer to stay behind the camera, not in front of so many people, and. But the point is, in my work is I started to do photography in the end of the 80s, and it was daily newspaper, every day taking pictures for the daily news. And the war started in Yugoslavia, and then I came here. Then I noticed that actually the not famous people or marginalized people, they need to be photographed. And all these famous people and actors or whatever, they are not in my books, In my books, they are ordinary people. And most of the time, it is, for me, it was important to give them identity. And this identity is something what is needed, especially for the people what they are on margin from society. That belongs Roma people or refugees or homosexuals or homeless people or whatever, as I said, and this is my mission, and this is something what I like to do, and I propose to make this book before I get very old or before I die.
But basically, there are like a lot of things in this book which are also critically dealing with your approach, and which are trying also to define what you have done. I mean, since the first project, like, let's say, bigger project, Duldung in the 90s, you have been working with, and
yes.
with Bojana Page, I have to mention her, and also Rajko Đurić, which was a very important project, which was done by NGBK back then in 97. And also the struggle of people not to be deported to the Balkans after being so long there. So for us, the main question there was like how to deal with the notion of what is performativity, what is solidarity in your work, how to deal with a political issue, what is for you political, how you are like co-working together with Roma families, like how they are creating image of themselves through you being an object of their co-creation or creation of the representation of themselves. So all of this was very important for us to demystify and to debunk it, to find out how. And the text of Suzana Milevska about performativity and participativity in your work was actually one of the things that we were starting to think about all these notions and qualities of your work. So I would give her then to Suzana exactly that, and she can help us to understand all these things.
The first meeting that we had in Skopje, it was something that stayed very long in my mind, because in fact I think that Nino has some kind of relatives in Macedonia, and this is one thing that we have in common. But more importantly for this situation, for this context, is that photography is something that we both have we are both very fond for. So it's not only the medium of photography. I want to be clear here. It's photography as a kind of, I would easily say, way of life. And my title, it's not, or the essay is not by accident: identity, representation, participation, and performativity in Nino's photographs. It's because I struggled a lot since my education is in art history, one of the most boring disciplines in the world, which always wants to classify things. So it's really about classification and distinctions between different media, different approaches. One of the things about photography that bothered me was the division between documentary and so-called art photography. With this text, somehow I clarified to myself why this disdain for this kind of clear distinction between documentary photography and so-called artistic or art photography. In my view, and I haven't written this in the text, it came only after this invitation to share some afterthoughts with you. It came exactly through performativity and participatory approach towards photography. This is what connects these two media, so that I cannot make really clear-cut distinction between these two approaches in photography, particularly if you know a lot about Nino's work, you will understand some of the photographs are here, some are in the books. You can understand that, in fact, he's not having only this participatory approach where he invites participants to be part of his project. He is also the participant in the project. And this makes a whole of difference. He is part of the community. He is part of this event or events, series of events of making these photographs. These are not only objects. These are actually both objects and subjects, because he creates subjectivity through these kind of photographs. What were the problems with photography at the beginning of the medium? At the very start of this medium, at the very first emergence of the medium, the photography was seen as a kind of objective medium, as something that is really important in revealing some even physical laws, like Maybridge and Murray, that invented even a certain kind of gadgets, to make possible, to document our movements or movements of horses or birds, flights of the birds. And this is perhaps why in history of photography, photography was seen as objective, as something rational, as something that will help us see things that we don't see with naked eye. But I argue in my text that actually none of this is true. Mm-hmm. That photography is not what we wanted it to be, that always already at the very the beginning of this medium, it embeds all the possible wrongs, all the possible stereotypes that we have about the world. The truth of the world turned to be somewhere else, not in photography. And this is why we struggle even today with all these images that we are encountering through media that are positioned or presented as so-called truth. We know that the montage, the interference, the Photoshop, the AI now can do really wonders with this truth, can really cut it into pieces and manipulate it and present it as truth, something that is not there, or at least not as a whole, the whole truth. And this is where the work of Nino is important, because for many years, and I know this from my own experience with the open call in 2010 for the second Roma Pavilion, even the Roma artists, the Roma photographers were not immune of this kind of internalization of the so-called truth about themselves. And we received thousands of images, and Rena and Vladan knows about this, they were in the jury of the selection, that somehow perpetuated these stereotypes, even though the artists were Roma. Why? Because they were educated in our own terms. I'm Gaji, I'm not Roma. And I don't distance myself of this not so comfortable truth that our education, our media are all tainted by these stereotypes. And this is why I thought that it's important to really focus, I focused in the text, to this participatory and performative aspect of Nino's work, where he is part of the community and he somehow is part of all these problems, including the stereotypes. But you should be aware, you should not present the stereotypes as the truth. You should be aware what is the problem with these stereotypes. But I just wanted to say that I'm far from stating that Nino discovered this or invented this. It pre-existed, for example, in North Macedonia during the rebellion or insurgent against the Ottoman Empire. The photographers, brothers Manaki, had props in their studio with uniforms that women could dress into these rebellions, haiduks that fight against the empire, even when they were not real heroes. This performativity and participatory aspect was also important. There was one photograph of a woman that unveils herself, young Albanian woman, that unveils herself during the Young Turks Revolution, because in North Macedonia the Ottoman Empire was still in rule. And all these segments taught me not to think about the first, who was the first or who invented, but how to see all these relations and why they're important. They're important because subjectivity takes place exactly in this moment of this relation between the photographer and the subject, that at the same time it's a kind of relation that is more important sometimes. I'm not negating the importance of photography, don't get me wrong, of the photographs as objects. But this relational aspect, this participatory aspect, is really important. And I will end with an example of Nino's work that is in the book, that was for me a kind of revelation because I didn't know it from before. It was the gladiators. The series of gladiators. And this kind of series is really important because of the whole history behind it of slavery, and you will read more in the book. I really urge you to read this text and to know more about this work. Maybe Nino can tell us more. But this participatory momentum of making this reference to long-term slavery in Romania is really important because you can see the image is really amazing. It's so exciting, but the history behind it, the relation that Nino established with his subjects that perform this kind of reference to slavery, it all comes together that goes far beyond the image itself, the photograph itself. It's a kind of I would say conceptual artwork, and it's easy to brand it like this. It's not just a photograph as a kind of documenting the momentum, even though it is documenting the momentum. So I will just complete the circle. So much from this distinction between documentary and art photography. This is exactly where these two meet. It is document of this particular subject, like this unveiled young woman in Bitola, in my hometown in North Macedonia. It's in a way, like Deleuze would say, it's this face that reveals itself in the case of the unveiled woman. And it's all this history that is revealed through this series of images. I really liked the most Valentino. It's really my favorite, and I didn't see it here, but it's in the book. So I urge you to open the book, to read, or just to see, to look at the images. And I'm really happy to be here, to be able to share this, my afterthoughts. It's a kind of preamble, it's a kind of introduction to my text. There are so many other things in the text, but I felt responsible to give you the introduction to know how I came to this text.
We also not see this as some kind of final step of his, not final step, but like the finalization of his work or something like that. We see it actually as a step for further analyzing what we can do with this work and how he will continue with working in it. So this is a kind of epistemological break, so to say, this book for us, and this collaboration with Nino especially was important also to understand the part of Nino's work, because he is like a community photographer, you can say. And he is the one who is known in Berlin as somebody who who is documenting political events, art events, cultural events, and who is also in the same time part of these things. And Moritz Pankok, with his gallery Kai Dikhas, was actually, since the beginning, was working with Nino, and for him, your text is the photographer of solidarity, and you are referring to his very important characteristic. For you, this co-creation with him was something special. Maybe
Yes.
you can tell us something about that.
Yes, I don't know actually when did we meet. I can't actually imagine Kai Dikhas without Nino. So in 2011 we started, and I think we met straight in the beginning. I was lucky
Second
enough.
exhibition.
And second exhibition. So I can't imagine Kai Dikhas without you, and it's a great privilege to have you as a friend. From the very beginning, people thought when we opened Kai Dikhas that actually Kai Dikhas would be a place where we would show photos about Roma and Sinti. So many people applied to make exhibitions who were Gadje, who made like some picturesque photographs about Roma. And I had to explain again and again, no, it's about art of artists who are from this background, and they make their art themselves. And if we once make a photography exhibition, we will show also photography with the authorship of someone who's linked to the minority. Through working with Nino and through actually getting to know his work, there is actually another model of how photography is. It is not about this being this objective method to document some truth, as you said, but in Nino's hand, it's more something that Nino is somehow looking for his own in his photographs. He's meeting the people and he's documenting the people in a way, but in that way that he is kind of present in his subjectivity. So he's becoming part of what is going on, and he is somehow complicit with the people who he portrays. And since Nino is doing this now for those mentioned 30 years, it is an amazing volume of artworks he actually made, and he created somehow with his photographs that the people who do the art, the artists he portrays, somehow become the artwork of him in his photographs. And that's really amazing because I can't think of anyone else who has created such body of work in this way. So he becomes part of what is going on, and in there he takes the pictures. So his photography is also a very sensual way of being with people. So Nino is someone who knows a lot about hospitality, about sharing time with someone else, sharing life with someone else, and within this, those photos come into existence. So sometimes you could say that the mechanical machine of the camera as an apparatus is in between you and what's going on, but somehow it's for Nino something that he goes through this into the middle of what's going on. So he's kind of becoming part of all this, rather it is a dividing technological instrument, you know, it's somehow a central thing to become part of what's going on. And through Nino and his approach towards photography, we kind of found the alternative to all those people who were applying at Kai Dikhas with those nice black and white photographs of some poor people they would depict as so-called Roma, yes, from their position. There were sometimes, you know, those photos are visually striking and you think, wow, it's so authentic, you know, but they all are kind of brutal towards the people who they depict. Rather they say, you know, we share a solidarity with those poor people who we portray in those pictures. Nino, on the contrary, he makes photographs who are really documents of solidarity. That's why I called this article in this book like this, because I think that's the most precious thing I find in his work.
So one important aspect of the production of this book was also translation into Romani language. and was also a translation basically into German, and proofreading work that was done by our colleagues and collaborators. We also want to thank to all of them. Dirk Auer, who did proofreading in German, Adele Eisenstein, she did proofreading in English, and Christian Pandjur and Diana Kirilova, who did translation and proofreading in Romani. I think this is very important to have it also in 3 languages, this book. And this work was, as for us as editors, was also quite demanding. But I think it was very important aspect to have it also in these layers and in these contexts. So I would, a lot of friends and collaborators and colleagues are basically here also with us tonight, and I would like to open floor for a couple of questions or comments to you, to public. Sorry?
Let's drink Slivovitz.
And to see us to skip maybe this. But Matthias Reichelt has something to ask.
I would be very interested. How did you cooperate, you both, with Nino?
Of course, we met a lot of times in person, yes, but more talking, not so much looking at the images. Actually, we were talking about what happened all those years and what were the issues,
stories.
the stories. Actually, it was a big storytelling session. And then we conceptualized according to these stories, actually already the book. It was already written without images,
Yes.
in a way. And then we got a hard disk full of images.
And we were meeting in person, having like very long sessions, like talking about his work. But you know, having in mind that Rena and I are someone who have been following scene in Berlin through Nino's camera since very long time, let's say since 20 years or more than 20 years. So we have been, so to say, we have been someone who had accumulated this knowledge and these years of, you know, like observing what Nino does and what other people are doing. So we were not someone who just came from the blue sky and then sit with Nino and talk about it.
Oh,
So we knew about also Duldung project that Bojana and Rajko did in the 90s. We knew about aspects. We have been also involved in the struggle against deportations of Roma people to the Balkans in the beginning of 2000s in Belgrade, so from the another side. So we have been like totally involved into all these aspects of his work.
Also poetry from Hedina I found very important.
Yes.
We forget to say that her poetry is very strong, and she's also included in a book. Unfortunately, she can't come today. Also, without ERIAC, the book wouldn't be also not possible to make.
Also this what you mentioned with Hedina. I think that poetry of Hedina, I really encourage all of you just to check it. The poetry is like dividing each chapter basically, and those are the poetry part. And the poetry is very striking, you know. And the poetry gives the note for the photos. The poetry
Like
gives
the melody.
Yes, it gives the melody, and you know, even a lot of text is not needed. You know, you have photos and you have this poetry, and maybe, you know, like that's it. Huh? And that's the reason also why we put all this text, you know, at the back of the book, because texts are important, and this contextualization
Usually
is
the opposite.
important. Yeah, because, you know, yeah, people do it. They put text in the beginning, and then we put it at the end, because poetry and photography speaks for itself.
That the publication and this entire project enjoys the support of Hauptstadt Kultur
Kulturfond,
Fund,
yes.
and we are very grateful for this support. So.
Don't forget.